The bridge that faded. In the town of Twin Rivers, a grand bridge spanned the water, connecting two once thriving communities, the industrious West Side, with its bustling markets and workshops, and the fertile East Side, known for its vast fields and orchards. The bridge had stood for generations, not just as a physical link, but as a symbol of cooperation. Both sides had built it together, stone by stone. But as the years passed, something began to change. The West Side started to grumble that the East wasn't pulling its weight. "They've got all that farmland, but they don't share enough of their harvest," said one shopkeeper. The East Side, meanwhile, whispered that the West was greedy. "They overcharge for goods we need," a farmer said bitterly. Slowly, mistrust began to seep into conversations like poison in a well. One summer, after heavy rains, cracks appeared in the bridge's foundation. The elders of both communities gathered to discuss repairs, but the meeting quickly devolved into finger-pointing. "This is your fault," said a merchant from the west. "You used the bridge to bring your carts of produce to our markets, wearing it down." The East Side fired back. "You've got more people crossing it every day for trade. It's your responsibility to fix it." Nothing was decided. Meanwhile, the cracks widened, but the bridge remained standing. People assumed it would hold, just as it always had. As time passed, the arguments grew louder. Gossip spread like wildfire. Stories about selfish West Siders and lazy East Siders were told around dinner tables and in taverns. Newspapers on each side printed headlines that stoked resentment. The West Side began charging higher tolls for goods brought over the bridge. The East Side retaliated by limiting the flow of crops, hoarding grain during harvest season. Both sides suffered, but rather than seeing their shared pain, they turned on each other with even greater fury. No one noticed how the bridge began to sag. Years later, the cracks in the bridge had become too large to ignore. An engineer from the West inspected it and declared, "It needs immediate repairs, or it will fall." But instead of joining forces, the leaders of each side turned the issue into a political game. On the West Side, merchants lobbied to privatize the bridge, claiming they could manage it better. On the East Side, farmers rallied for a new bridge farther upstream, one they could control themselves. Neither plan went anywhere, but the fight left both communities angrier and more divided than ever. As the bridge deteriorated, crossing it became dangerous. Loose planks creaked underfoot, and pieces of stone occasionally crumbled into the river below. People whispered rumors of accidents, stories of carts plunging into the water and traders disappearing in the rapids. Instead of fixing the bridge, each side began arming themselves. The West Side built a checkpoint at the bridge entrance, claiming it was to ensure safety. The East Side started patrolling the riverbanks, accusing the West of planning a takeover. Tensions escalated. The bridge, once a pathway for trade and connection, became a battleground. One stormy night, the river swelled with relentless rain. The rotting beams groaned under the pressure, and the cracks in the foundation widened until, with a deafening roar, the bridge collapsed into the raging waters below. When the townspeople woke the next morning, they found the bridge reduced to rubble. Each side stared across the river at the other, their faces filled with anger, fear, and perhaps a flicker of regret. But the damage was done. Instead of mourning together, they turned their frustration into hatred. "They let this happen," shouted someone from the West. "They always cared more about themselves," retorted someone from the East. Without the bridge, the two communities became isolated. The West Side's markets dwindled without fresh produce from the East. The East Side's fields went untended without access to tools and goods from the West. Trade stopped. Families were divided. What was once a thriving town became two hollowed-out halves, both slowly crumbling under their own weight. Over time, the river between them became more than just a physical barrier. It became a symbol of their distrust, a scar etched into the heart of their shared history. The ruins of the bridge, now overgrown with weeds, served as a grim reminder of what they had lost. The bridge didn't fall all at once. It was the slow decay of trust, fueled by selfishness and fear, that brought it down. In the end, the townspeople didn't lose just the bridge. They lost their connection to one another, and with it, the chance to thrive together.